Planks are an exercise that are very commonly used as an exercise or movement in fitness programming. But how you do planks, how you execute them, is critical if you want to get the results that you intend. So let's talk about why you do planks in the first place. Most people think about doing planks to train the front part of the abdomen, which is correct. But let's also think about, when we're doing this, trying to create a little bit better balance between the forces in the front and the back of the spine. Most of us tend to live in a world where our backs have a little bit more arch than we really want. You see this commonly in a lot of folks that exercise frequently. They tend to get very strong in the muscles that extend their spine, less strong in the muscles in the front. So the spine skews into a position to where it has more arch than maybe it should. Why is that an issue? As you get older, those compressive forces add up. You start to see more things like facet arthritis, stenosis of the spine, which obviously can cause discomfort, pain, can reduce nerve function. So great idea to try to establish a little bit more balance between these muscles and actually bring the spine into more of a neutral position to where it comes out of that arch and it can live a little bit more in an open or neutral state. Let's talk about the muscles that are involved here. I think that's helpful. Most people think of the front of your core being abs, which it is. So you've got the rectus abdominals that come down from the ribs in a straight line, two twin lines to the pelvis. Very important. But underneath of that, deeper, you have the transverse abdominis, which wraps around the spine and gives it a tremendous amount of support. Then coming off the ribs on each side, you have external obliques that come down and grab the pelvis. All these muscles work together as a team to produce the plank, and also along with another very important muscle group, the serratus muscles, which come off the inside edges of the shoulder blades and down into the ribs. They literally help set up the foundation of the plank. So you've got four muscles there. They're really going to work together in a team orchestrated fashion to make an effective plank. So let's talk about how to set this up. So Greg, why don't you go ahead and come down. Now we've elevated Greg on a box. This does tend to help the positioning a little bit for a lot of people. You're going to notice that we don't get out in that typical very straight-legged plank, and there's a reason for that. So Greg, take the legs back just a little bit more. Again, we're going to want to make sure that while he's performing this exercise, that he's not reinforcing that arch back. And you can see this in a lot of people when they do a plank. They get set up and their back is very extended. We don't want to do that because that's literally going to reinforce the dominance of these muscles that are already overactive. So there's a concept here called pelvic tipping, which might be something that you need to focus on a little bit before even going into a plank, and we'll provide information for that at a later time. But Greg is going to perform that. So he's going to do what we call a little pelvic tilt. So Greg, tell you what, go into a hard arch first, so really compress. You see that, how this is all bunched together? That's creating a tremendous amount of compression in the spine. That's literally the position a lot of people live in day to day. That's the position a lot of people perform a plank in. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is have the pelvis come under. That's a posterior tip. Posterior tip meaning the back side of the spine is opening up. And then what I want Greg to do is to maintain that during the movement. So he's going to take a breath in, and as he exhales, he'll come up and bring his knees off the ground. Notice he's keeping the knees soft. That lets him more easily maintain that pelvic tip and keep the spine open. Head is up, chin is in. We don't want the head to duck. Force of the forearm. So from the elbow all the way through the hand, he's keeping even tension along his forearm, and he's actually trying to press into that pad a little bit because that's going to bring those all-important serratus muscles into play. And then he's thinking about pulling down his ribs to his pelvis. He's stitching those ribs down tight. If I cue him, I can feel these side walls engage very strongly. That's a perfect plank. When you're breathing, it helps to breathe deliberately and slowly. Breath in through the nose, and as you exhale through the mouth, think about those ribs getting down tight and locking in. That's great, Greg. Relax. So that would be an excellent way for most folks to do a plank. There's a lot of variations which we can talk about later. A couple other thoughts real quick. Duration, time versus intensity. You see people holding planks, they make it a competition, want to hold it for 2 minutes, 3 minutes. That's when form really goes out the window. You see people shifting, you see heads dropping, going into that hard arch again. We really prefer a hard set plank. So coming into position, really locking into it for a shorter period of time, maybe 20 to 30 second bursts on the movement, but then perhaps doing it more frequently. So instead of one long set, maybe break it up 2, 3, 4 shorter bursts where you can really stay engaged. Other thought on this, when in your routine are you going to do your plank? Remember, if you do this correctly, you're going to fatigue your anterior abdominal wall pretty significantly for a lot of people. So you probably don't want to do your planks before you're doing a movement where that core is going to need to be very engaged. So things like squats, deadlifts, overhead work, particularly with more increased resistance, perhaps it's going to be better to take that plank to the end of the routine.